Good afternoon.
It's better now. Okay, sorry for my weak voice. I will try to be as loud as possible. Yes? The microphone is just for recording.
Okay.
Okay? Looks strange, but that's new technology. Okay. Well, as you may know, I'm Marija Milinković, assistant professor at the Faculty of Architecture at University of Belgrade. And it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all here in today in the Museum of Contemporary Art at the beginning of the 5th event of Cost Action dedicated to middle-class mass housing in Europe. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming here in these difficult and really strange times. Then, as you know, we start the meeting with the seminar entitled Belgrade Middle Class Apartment and Far Beyond. And in these 2 days, we will have the series of lectures and presentations. Tomorrow, we will meet at the Faculty of Architecture. And today, we will start here with official opening and with kind of warming up. With hopes that our meeting will bring prolific exchange of ideas and thoughts in the following days. I would like to invite first our Dean, Professor Vladimir Lojanica, to welcome you all, and later our chair of the Cost Action, Milheiro, to open the meeting officially. Since the Dean, Professor Lojanica, is also an expert in our topic, and I was inspired with the Milan meeting last time, and realized that I can ask Professor Lojanica to give us a short introduction to our meeting. So that is how we are going to start our 4 days long journey. Once again, dear colleagues, dear friends, thank you all for coming here. And I can ask Professor Lojanica, please, to get come. Yes.
I have the
okay. I will keep this one.
This is going to do the job again. Just as a continuation of this welcoming note, I also would like to welcome you, ladies and very few gentlemen, to this Belgrade meeting. Very important, of course. To this meeting, and like Marija told you already, I prepared a short introduction. It's more like a movie trailer. It's a teaser for the beginning of the conference. It's not especially scientific, but I think it's going to be some kind of a kickoff for the days that are going to follow next. So, if you don't mind, I will sit behind the computer so I can go through the slides. Okay, like this. So again, I also would like to welcome you at the Faculty of Architecture, University of Belgrade. It's a little bit awkward situation since we are not sitting there yet, but for the next 3 days, you're going to be stationed basically in this building in a city center. Our faculty is 175 or more years old. It has a long tradition, and ever since, all educational curricula is somehow structured around the topic of mass and the multifamily housing. So since the very beginning, we are using multifamily housing and housing in principle to educate the new generations of architects. We are experimenting with it. This is the core thing in our faculty. Through all of this history, it's kind of, something that's special about it, because this is something that we are also very proud of. And you will see later on through the presentations that this dedication to the topic of housing throughout this period of time had some very exceptional moments. I would also like to welcome you to Belgrade. Belgrade is saturated with all different sorts of housing architecture. That's basically because it has a turbulent history, and throughout the turbulent history, if you look only these 170 years since the beginning of the high education in Serbia, a lot of things happen, and basically the architecture of the housing is reflecting the society throughout this period. So if you investigate through the housing architecture of Belgrade, you're gonna have a scan through the history changes and how the context is changed and how this reflected to architecture. Also, it's a good thing that you are here in spring, because it's the most beautiful time to visit Belgrade. It's because all this saturated greenery is covering up the grayness of some of the buildings in the areas. And it's good that you're going to have a tour around the Belgrade. It's planned, it's scheduled to be on Friday. So I hope you're going to have a great time, because you're going to identify everything that we're going to mention now. I was thinking on how to do this, because it's not very easy to sum up the history of Belgrade housing architecture within a period of 10 minutes. I mean, it's almost impossible. But I will try just to focus on some crucial issues throughout this period, and crucial periods of housing with its specificities. And this is going to be this teaser that I was speaking about. So, like many of you already possibly know, the right-hand side of the image is the old town of Belgrade, old city of Belgrade. It's divided by the river from the left-hand side of the picture, which is New Belgrade. And in the early 20s and 30s, since we are registering the first specificities in the housing architecture in Serbia, basically, and in Belgrade, you can see that the focus of construction was mainly in the old town. This is the period that we used to call it, and we are still calling it, the early Belgrade modern housing architecture. And this has its own specificities, but I will just go through the whole thing and then emphasize some characteristics of each and every period. So afterwards, during the 50s and 80s, the focus of construction of the housing architecture shifted from the old town towards the New Belgrade. It's because of the ideology and the context. I will say something about that only briefly later on. Then during the 90s until 2010, maybe, it shifted back from the New Belgrade back to the downtown of Belgrade. Again, because of the contextual influences that are quite different than in the previous period. And later on, until 2010, all until now, it's scattered all over the place. It's chaotic, it's not organized, and we will tackle some of these issues as well. So, whilst the focus of the construction of the housing architecture was spiraling throughout the city and throughout the vertical timeline, on the other hand, the development of the typical floor plan, the plan that was applied in the buildings, was more in a linear type of development. And you have, coming from the left to the right, you have the development of the typical floor layout. What's interesting is that it started in 20s and 30s, and it ended up in 80s. So after 80s, we cannot record a significant and major step up in the functional organization of the typical floor unit of the housing architecture. It's simple, we will probably see why. But let's start with the 20s and the 30s. Of course, at that time, we didn't know exactly how to construct and to build housing in the downtown area, because we didn't have downtown area earlier. And this is the beginning of this sort of a city class that and the investment, and they tried to construct the city matrix within the old town. We borrowed the templates of the typical unit floor layouts from the Central European cities like Prague or Budapest or any Central European city that already had distinctive topologies in this field, and adjusted to the local needs. And the curious thing about this is that in this period, which we call the New Belgrade, early Belgrade modern architecture, you have the same typical floor layout, which is in the middle, and you have two different representations in form and in style at the same time. So it was a kind of a struggle between the classicism, eclecticism, romanticism, and the new modern movements at the same time, the same period of time. This is something that's very specific. That's very specific about this type of architecture. And I'm definitely sure that you will see it, when you have the tour around the Belgrade around. The Second World War stopped it, interrupt this struggle. So we actually never know how it will going to end, because after the Second World War, the whole ideology changed. And you know that. I mean, this is a common thing. The context is completely different. We used to have matrix 80 by 80 meters in the downtown. Now we have the matrix 300 meters by 150 meters in the New Belgrade. It's a completely different mind setup. It goes along with the progressive architecture of modernism throughout the world. It goes along with the new modern cities of Chandigarh, new modern cities of Brasilia. So it's the same principles of Siam. It was a hype. I mean, it was a global planetary hype. So every single city, in Europe, including the Belgrade at that time, followed up the same principles. And it has the stronghold, so to speaking, in the ideology. It was purposeful. I don't have enough time to go into details now, but the thing is that the overall ecosystems of that time produced this type of mass housing architecture. So it couldn't happen in any time frame except on this one. So this was the moment for this type of architecture to emerge. So we have a New Belgrade. And, you can criticize it, you can find all sorts of negative sides to it, but, after the 50 years period of time or more, even, I mean, we can come to a conclusion that it has some substance in it. And it has some specificums of the Belgrade environment in it as well. It was obvious when you're going to see those settlements around the downtown Belgrade and the New Belgrade side. You will see the specificities of it, and this is something that we characterized at the Belgrade School of Architecture in a mass housing. So why is that so? Because its ecosystems pushed the people at the university also to think about the public housing, the mass housing, the socialist housing. I don't really like to call architecture socialist architecture, democratic architecture, capitalistic architecture. This is not true. This is the architecture from the period of socialism. And the emphasis is not on the type of architecture or on the architect. The point is on the context in which this type of architecture emerges. So this ecosystem gave us competitions for the buildings. They gave us a specific effort of the architects at the university and out of the university to try to better the housing. And with this struggle, we actually produced a phenomenon that's called Belgrade School of Architecture. The phenomenon is published in this magazine, and I can see that in the forward of this course and the conference. Actually, you mentioned it, Maria, there, and it's a book that is evidence of that time. And everything that I'm speaking about, you can find there, both theoretically and practically throughout the overview of the competition works from that period. And this is basically a kind of a Bible if you want to be into housing of Belgrade of that time. The development of the typical floor unit was exceptional. We went all the way to the flexibility and cooperation with the industry. So it was modular at the same time and flexible at the same time. It was amazing. Some of the performative characteristics of the Belgrade School of Architecture I'll put here on this chart. I apologize, I really don't have time to go through it on this occasion. But you can see, I'm not going to read it out. You can see on the slide, what is it all about? It's all about the functionality of the space, of the dimensioning of the space, of the specific flavor of the apartment that influences the way of life. It's a culture of living, a new culture of living. So this is the Belgrade School of Architecture. And it wouldn't be possible without direct connection between arts and engineering. This is what I mentioned earlier. Direct connect between the theory and practice, because when I told you at the beginning that the things are happening at the Faculty of Architecture around the curricula that are taking care about the housing, this is the practical consequence of the theoretical investigations in the university. And unfortunately, it happened only then. So we couldn't recreate it today, so far. We'll see. Maximum quality of dwelling for a minimum used square meters. Broader context influences a floor layout. There's a contextual approach. So when you are thinking about the rooms within the floor layout, you are thinking of where that window is overlooking at, and is the wind blowing from that direction, and all sorts of things. Curiosity of architects, because you have to be curious in order to move the existing paradigms. This is the essence, basically, of the Belgrade School of Architecture concerning the house. When we move towards the 80s, we already sort of relaxed with the tempo because of the financial situation of the general society. And then we start thinking, as well as the other European cities were thinking, how to fill in those blank spots within the new Belgrade with the new housing types that have a smaller scale in order to make them more human. This is a very generous, a very human thought, but has, in our context, had a devastating consequence. But nothing happened in the 80s because, a second world crisis hit us on the 90s. So then again, we shifted the focus of the construction of the housing architecture from the new Belgrade back to the downtown city throughout the 90s and 2010. And we scaled down the investment, we scaled down the aspirations, we scaled down the everything. So it was a completely different scale of housing applied at that time. There were no money, there were no big political interest, there were no big state financing. Everything was, just scattered in a small bites here and there, trying for the people individually to find their happiness here, there, and for a little bit richer people to make a profit. So we start to fill in the gaps, but not on the New Belgrade side at the moment, but on the old Belgrade side, because it was more achievable. It was smaller and it was, at the grasp. Not to mention the development of the floor layout. I don't know. Yeah, you can see it. So nothing about the functionality, maximum comfort, culture of living, connection to the wider context. It's disastrous. Really. It's just the mathematics of the return of investment. Then we have 2010 until now, and it sort of expands. So it's now all over the place, and we are following, the money. Yeah, basically, the money is dictating where and who and for what is going to be built what. We have at the moment more than 2 million square meters in Serbia of not legalized housing buildings. So that was the housing that was constructed without the architect. And only last year we have 750,000 square meters of the housing dwelling space that was constructed in Belgrade. So it's an amazing amount of square meters. And we are still building it. So that means that there is a demand for it, and that there is a mathematics behind it. And that's perfect, only if it's, thought through, but unfortunately it's not exactly thought through. So in the next series of slides, I will just show you the regular examples. On the left-hand side is the 80s, architecture in the 80s, from the downtown city of Belgrade. And on the right-hand side, the same from this period that I'm speaking about. So you will be the judge, what's going on and in what direction. So I don't really know what happened to us. I mean, we knew how the things should be done proper way 50 years ago. We knew it, and now we are not doing it. So something is definitely wrong. And I cannot say that you have to blame a bad architecture for the bad city, the bad outlook of the city. Or you have to blame a bad urbanism for the bad city. So this is something that I'm a little bit confused. I think both things are making it bad, but I think maybe even the bad urbanism is taking the lead here. So you cannot correct things that you made a mistake when you are doing the big planning. I mean, in the city. With the architecture like this and like that, you can handle it. But if you make mistakes on this kind of the scale and with this kind of the level, I don't think that it can be reversible, not but for a long period of time. And just a quick example. So this is the architecture versus other industrial product of the same time. So you can feel and you can see, you know, how the architecture came from another world, you know, comparing to the cars. Now we have the architecture coming from another world, you know, from the actual moment in which we are having this type of car. So I would expect actually that we continued where we stopped 50 years ago and developed the architecture up to the same level as Le Corbusier did it, you know, 70 years ago or more. And what I have to say, I mean, as long as there is a demand, there is the misinterpretation of the architecture and the architects, and this is the price it's covering. I mean, the symbol of euros in the upper right corner, it's 350,000 euros for 80 square meters apartment in Vračar. And it's glamorous because it's painted in gold. You know, we have a major issue with the system of value. I mean, that's it. That's the basic problem. And we are at the edge of the good taste. And this is what's happening, basically. So it's not everything is not everything is bad. We had beautiful moments throughout the 90s, and we have them now already. But I'm speaking about the majority of the production. The average production needs to be very high quality for a society to be able to say that we are up to our task in our time. If you lower the quality in percentage of architecture, then basically you cannot give yourself a compliment like that. So we do have investigations on the flora layout today also. A younger generation through the competition practice today also experiments with the typical layouts of the apartments, and this is kind of coming, you know, to us, you know, with the delay of the 50 years that we knew something and that we need to open this magazine, you know, from 74, 75, and to actually read and see what those people there then, you know, told us in terms of the housing architecture. We are experimenting with the typologies again. We are building and constructing things that they're not bad. I mean, it's okay. It's average, but the level of average is okay, higher than it was, you know, a couple of years ago. And we can say that we are making some progress, but it's still not really clear in which direction it goes. And yeah, I'm definitely not satisfied with the percentage of this kind of architecture. So what we can do, we can analyze, put it in the charts, compare the periods, see the intensity of the different social and economical and ecological and technological contexts, how they are influencing the architecture history-wise, and analyze it and try to conclude something and so on and so forth. We can also analyze the typical floor layout, and we can, you know, go in very detailed figures, square meters, cost per build, gross area, type of architect, I don't know, all sorts of things throughout the different period and draw some conclusions. And I would really, really, really appreciate if within the next 3 days, someone can tell me what is going to be the next picture in the layout development of the Belgrade mass housing architecture. That's all for today from me. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
You want this? Okay, thanks. And then one. Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry, I have it. It's this one, I think. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. I will just put it in. Okay. So thank you very much for being here. As Maria said before, my name is Ana Vaz Milheiro. I'm a professor at the University of Lisbon, and I'm the chair of this cost action with Gaia Caramelin, which is our vice chair from Polytechnic de Milano. And we are very, very grateful to be here today. It is an honor, and we wait so long for this meeting. Maria is preparing this meeting for almost 2 years now, because of COVID, because of a lot of different situations. We really, delay a lot. So thank you very much for coming and for believing in our costs. And now that we are in the 3rd year, I really realized today when I was in the meeting with the core group, I realized that we are really experiencing cost action, because we have all this pandemic situation, which was very hard, because cost actions, it's the idea of connecting people, sharing experience, and not sharing in virtual, but sharing presential, face to face, because it's really, really important for us as researchers to be able to expose our research, expose our methodologies, talk with other researchers, try to figure out, the difficulties, the obstacles, and so on. So I think it's really, really important that we can be together as a team. So we are a huge team, a team of more or less 150 researchers. We have the opportunity as now to attend lectures like the one that the dean of this university gave us. It was a huge, it's so interesting lecture, the issues that you put. And I was figured out during the lecture that if it was for today, if we started today, one of the points that it's really important when we are researching middle class mass housing is the financial issue. So when we started this cost action, it was not so, we didn't realize the importance, and now as a group we realize that this financial change everything. And Professor Vladimir was talking about if you have socialist architecture, democratic architecture, capitalist architecture. Of course, we cannot label architecture like that, but it's the process of financing architecture, on financing housing, it's very important. And that's why I think studying the process of financing, it's also an important issue for us. But anyway, we didn't organize at the time like this, so we don't have this topic. So maybe an idea for other developments, because cost action is, the idea is putting researchers together in order to debate our work, and in order to make things happen after the cost action. So because this is our third year, and is our fifth, as Maria said, meeting. I will invite you all to use this opportunity of being together to implement other groups, to implement other projects, because this is the idea. The idea is to putting people together in order to make other things and make other research happening. We are not a research group, we are a networking group. So this is about making, establishing connections among us. So I think it's very important that in this meeting you start also other projects, start other, use the opportunity that we didn't have before. I also would like to say a few words about the moment we live now. We have a very difficult moment during the pandemic, and now, well, for a Portuguese as me, we are facing a war in Europe, what I think it's quite threatening, and also I think housing issues will be much more important, because I'm sure that this war will also bring other problems and other challenges. So I really wanted to point, because for me it's quite important that we have the opportunity to be together, but I really want to remember you that we are facing a huge problem, at least in my opinion, my personal opinion, as share of this cost dedicated to housing. I think it's important to realize that always a war, it's always an impact on housing. So we were talking about post the period after the Second World War here. I'm sure this war will bring also new challenges. So I would just put some images. Of course, these are images that I have already shown you before. So we have this lucky to be part of this group. It's a huge group. We started with 7 countries when we applied for the first time, and we were able to reach here at the 3rd year with a lot of people involved. Of course, I know that we have a lot of work. Sometimes we can involve more and sometimes less. But I really, as a share of this cross-section, and I'm sure Gaia agrees with me, we would also, to challenging with these last months to be more and more involved, in the different ways, going to Congress, applying to ETC grants for conference, working in the working groups. It's very important that everybody, will participate in this last time. So we have among all these people together, different countries, different cultures. And the other thing that I found so interesting in the Professor Vladimir lecture was this idea that we really have different experiences. When we started this, it was also because of academic experience with my students in my former school. We were talking about housing, we were talking about the peripheries, and everybody in Portugal were very depressed because the periphery seems not so interesting when we were making comparative cases with the center of the city. Everybody hated the periphery. And we started to think that the periphery of the 50s, of the 60s, in the beginning, they were not hated. They were loved by the people. People really wanted to live in the periphery because they thought that they could have better houses, better apartments, better facilities. They would have garden, they would have open air, new hospitals, everything. So they did not really wanted to live in the center of the city. They wanted to live in this new modern city. And then this modern city became a kind of a monster. And I could not explain to my students why. So I challenged my students, and for instance, Felipe, who is one of them, I sent my students to try to understand what happened in the periphery. Was the architects the guilty one? Was the politics? Was the politicians? Were the urban design? What happened? And this started a little, because of the Portuguese case. And then we realized, going to a conference, that of course the situations were different if you were in a socialist country, or if you were in in America, in the South American country and so on. And this cost was born based on the idea that we could share the different historical backgrounds in order, as Professor Vladimir said, in order to have some answers for the present. If you compare the cases, if you learn with the past, maybe you can improve the future, not the present, but the future. So I think we are very lucky to be here today and to be part of this group. So we have lots of, lots of aims, of goals, of objectives. We create three working groups with different orientations. So the first one is, of course, it's more classical, more conventional, try to document the middle class mass housing. The other was more interested in trying to explore the borders of the concepts. And of course, the last one, more interested in explore the policies and, to show some possibilities for renewal, these historical projects made mostly in the 50s and until the 80s, more or less. This was the temporal frame that we choose in the beginning. And then people came and, they brought all their experience, new case studies. They put a lot of questions that we didn't anticipate in the beginning. And I think this really became much interesting. And we have the COVID and we have no opportunity to, to show our work, to share our work out also, and to be able to accomplish more. But I think and I feel that now we have that opportunity. At least I expect that. I'm very, very thankful to everybody who has worked too much, for our working groups leader, Inês, Uta, and else, of course, and other, the cool, and also the vice leaders of the working group. I think everybody will try it very hard to accomplish. So we hope to do something here. So I just want to make some image, to bring here some image of the past. We were very lucky. So he is boring and he's right. Children are always right. This is really boring. So we started here in Haifa. Lots of people in Haifa were very optimistic with this idea, very happy to meet each other. Now we are old friends, but we were meeting for the first time. Some of us, well, some of us are meeting before, but in the first time, in a very special context in Israel, which is also very challenging in terms of housing context. Unfortunately, Els is not here today. So we started with optimism, with being very optimistic about it. And then, of course, we had COVID experience, and I think it was hard times, but anyway, we tried to maintain the flame in order to, keep moving. And even if the COVID also teaches important things, that we could use other instruments, other tools to continue to communicate. Because, as I said before, this is a networking group. So the idea here is sharing, and building something together. I think it's the main idea. And then, of course, we tried to implement some of the tools. We have no opportunity to implement more. We would like it to implement more. So we count on you to doing it. So we have these training schools. This was the first, and until now the only one. We have one more at least scheduled for Vilnius. It will happen in summer, so please be prepared for participate. So we have. We tried also to. It's very important to involve young people, young researchers. And then we have one meeting in Lisbon. Of course, it's my city, so I was very happy to have a meeting there in my center of my research center where I belong, me and Monica and so on. And so it was the beginning of being, having things just flowing more naturally. And the last time we were together in a huge meeting was, of course, in Milan. And I think then we realized how we missed everybody and how it's important to work together. But also there are groups that do things, do prepare and organize events for more small groups. In Paris, for instance, we have already 2 editions of this local seminar in Paris. So it's very important also for us to feel that members want to organize things, to organize events. You know, we have 1 more year to organize, to plan. So please, if you feel that you can organize something related with our costs, please send us propositions to do it. We had also during our, so this was the first, the second event that we had during this year. So we know with the visits, this was the workshop in Antwerp related with working group 2, related to writing on middle class mass housing. So it's very, very important that, you know, you can just send us your suggestions. So this was the last slide. I really would like to end, and I would like to thank to Maria for her commitment. Maria is an example of how a member can, you know, can be really involved, and she was she fight a lot for us to have this meeting here since the beginning. So I really want her to thank her personally in the name of our group, of our family, this cost action family. And once more, I would like also to thank you all to believe that it's possible to continue to work even in difficult situations, and to believe that it was possible to proceed with this cost. I also would like to thank you, the lecture, which was really, really interesting and a very good introduction to how the problems to housing issues in Belgrade, and also make us, make us understand different approaches and importance, and also the connection between the education and research, which I think it's all, because most of us are professors or researchers and professors. So we are always involved in research. And I will welcome also our speaker that I think Maria will present. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you all for being part of this. So have a very good meeting here in Belgrade.